Welcome to episode number 46 of
Życie Bez Gruchy.
Jedyny życiowy podcast w Polsce dla geeków.
Today we're gonna have a very special guest from the US, from New York, Olga Kirshenbaum, who is what's called money whisperer. That's how her client call her. She's a money coach and the founder of Rags to Riches Consulting. And the goal of this episode is to answer the question why controlling your finances matters and why do you need to be aware of your finances. And we also talk about why money is kind of a taboo, like sex is. So Olga, great to have you here. And you had me on your podcast, and now I'm really delighted to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here, excited to talk about money, and excited to collaborate again.
Awesome. So, let's start off by, why did you decide to talk about money, first of all? Why?
Well, I knew I wanted to become an accountant when I was still in high school. I was one of those crazy people that was like, I'm going to graduate, I'm going to go to school, get an accounting degree. I always enjoyed money. I was always the go-to person for my friends, my family, with money matters. They always came to me. Then I got my accounting degree, worked as an accountant for 10 years, and then I found myself unfulfilled. There's something missing. So I found myself fired from my last full-time job, and I noticed there was a pattern of me finding myself unhappy in jobs that were great on paper. A year and a half later, I would find myself disengaged and unhappy, and I took that as an opportunity to see why that kept happening, because I refused to go into another job, not be happy, and have to do this all over again. I did some soul searching and found out that what was missing was this connection with people, connecting with people and teaching people how to manage their finances in a way that really helped them. And that's how I landed on money coaching.
And it's funny because, Gallup did a poll. I don't know if you know this study. They did a poll and I refer to that study a lot of times because what they found out in the research was that I think 80 or 76% of all the Americans were actively disengaged at work.
Yes, it's actually, I think it's 82% in the world. 82% of all employees are disengaged. And I think life is too short for that. We go to work and spend too much time at work. Even if you work a 40-hour week, chances are you're probably doing more work. There's no way that you can just clock out in your mind and stop thinking about things. And we just spend too much time not to enjoy what we're doing.
So that was your kind of primary reason as well, right? To kind of go out there, and that's how we connected, online.
Absolutely.
And I admire you because every time I look on LinkedIn, Olga is appearing on my feed. always, and I'm like, damn, she's awesome, this is the way to go. You're producing so much content, and this is an investment, and then people are becoming aware of you. And then you strike a conversation, and that's how we met, through our network and because of internet. So thank you for being the producer, I would say. And so tell me, where do you come from, and what's your story? How did you become an accountant?
Yes. Well, I think it's important to also go back to where I came from, because I think it also impacts the way I work with money, my money blocks and my experiences with money. So my parents grew up in communist Russia. I was actually born when it was still communist Russia. It fell a couple of years after I was born. But this mentality coming from communism and where it's socially inappropriate for you to have more money or more abundance or just in general more than everyone else around you, it's something that creeps into your mind and it becomes ingrained with everything that you do. So I found out doing the money coaching thing and trying to look for ways to help my clients, I also found out that I had some money blocks myself. And one of those things was something that I've been exploring a lot lately is this idea of money personalities. So I found out that I'm a money monk. A money monk is a person who believes that money is the root of all evil, that it's corrupt or it will corrupt me. And it actually came from this idea of like communism. You're supposed to have everything that everyone else has and nothing more. And I realized that it was stopping me from performing better in my business because I was actively keeping opportunities away because I felt like if I have more than my friends, than my clients, then somehow that makes me a bad person. So one of the things I do is I do a lot of reframing, and that's what I do for myself in this situation. I look for stories of people doing great things with their money. But the reason why I am so passionate about this is money is all around us. It's one of those things that we interact with on a daily basis. Chances are, even if you're spending a minimal amount every day, there's some sort of cost that is going out of your pocket. You're maybe making money today. Maybe you made money yesterday that you're spending today. But it's always happening, but we don't talk about it. It's like you said in the beginning, it's a taboo. We're not supposed to talk about it. It's rude. It's inappropriate. And most people don't have the solutions because of this, I believe. We grow up with money talk stigma. It's all this belief that it's bad to talk about. We become adults. No one taught us about anything about money at this point. We just picked up some stories through our childhood, observing people around us. And then we get into situations where maybe it is a money puzzle, as I like to refer to them. But how do you solve that puzzle when you've never actually had that conversation? So even though one of my things is helping people to get comfortable with money, one of my biggest pillars is actually starting money conversations, because I think if we have money conversations, have that transparency of how we're all handling it, the story that we tell ourselves that everyone else has it better, everyone has the money thing figured out except us, will begin to break down and will, I think, be able to learn from each other. So really, that's why I do what I do, is to start money conversations.
Absolutely. And where did you go to school? Was it like financial school?
Yes, so I got an accounting degree, a BS in accounting at Marymount Manhattan College. It was a private school in New York City, in Manhattan. And then I got an MBA in entrepreneurship. So for me, I didn't want to do another couple of years of accounting classes. I love accounting, but that would not have made me happy. It would have been too much. So I did entrepreneurship because I knew that I eventually wanted to start my own business. And I think it definitely helped me put myself on that path to starting Rags to Riches Consulting as it is today.
And do you think that schooling and the environment where you were, growing up and then educating yourself, do you think that actually helped you or, kind of progressing?
I think it's a very contentious subject these days. Like, is higher education worth it, especially in America where it's incredibly expensive? I'm very forthcoming about the student loans that I picked up going to grad school. It's over $130,000. Was it worth it? I think it really depends, right? Like, My family we were immigrants from Russia. My parents were not prepared when I was going to just undergrad. They had no idea how much it costs to send your kid to college. They didn't realize that the minute you're born, people are starting college funds. So and then they also we moved here when they were 40. It was less than 10 years and I was going to college, and it was like, we don't have connections. We don't know that many people. We don't know the process. So for me personally, I think it would have been a lot harder for me to do the things that I have accomplished had I not gone to school, because it gave me opportunities to interact with people that I would have never encountered, even in New York City. So for me, it was worth it because it gave me experiences. It opened up my eyes to different types of networks. And I was also not very challenged when I was in high school and middle school, and it allowed me to find new ways of challenging myself in the school setting. I really love school, but I wasn't fulfilled for so many years that even though it was expensive, for me, it was worth it in the end. But again, especially I think because of what I do, money in general, what matters to me, what matters to you, what matters to every single listener that's listening to this right now are completely different things. So for me, I've justified this $130,000 debt that I've picked up. It may not be worth it for other people listening. I think it's important to really talk to yourself about and be honest with yourself. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Is it going to be worth it? I mean, sometimes we still make choices and we're not happy with them because 2020 hindsight is great, right? You know everything, but that you did not know before. But at the same time, I don't know. I think it's important to understand why you're doing it. At least when you are looking back on it, you'll be able to say, I had my reasons.
So what is money? Should people know the definition of what is money? Should they study money, or should they, you don't study that, you don't look it up, you just do it, It's kind of like you breathe, you're breathing. You don't need to learn how to breathe.
I think it's a little bit tricky. I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's like the chicken and the egg. You can't really figure out what money is and what money is to you until you start playing around with it. And that requires going out there and maybe not knowing how to do something, but you go for it and you try and figure it out. But also money is a tool. It is something. It is also energy. I think if you're looking for abundance in your life and you're really looking to grow your wealth as opposed to just racking up dollars in your accounts, I think it's important to also think about it as a frequency. I definitely think that abundant money mindsets are also a frequency that you can access at any point in your life. But
how do you do it?
That requires a lot of work and a lot of talking to yourself about what is important to you. A lot of people come to me and they say, I want a lot of money, or I want to be good for retirement. And my first question is, what does that mean to you? It's very simple to say, here are the things you can invest in. Here are the different vehicles that you can grow your money. But I mean, why are you doing this? If the reason the why is important is that sometimes it's going to be annoying. So being strict with yourself. I have to budget. I'm doing this thing. You're always going to have temptation around you. Advertising is everywhere. Now that we're all locked down, especially, it's all moving online and it's just going to grow and grow and grow. So the temptation's always going to be there, or sometimes you want to go do something fun instead of being responsible. If your why is not that important, or really not your true why, chances are you're going to be I'm going to go spend on this thing, be irresponsible, And whatever you're trying to accomplish is just going to be harder. So that's why the why is important. But when you know what that is and what you're working for, then everything else becomes easier. And then actually you'll start to see that plugging into that frequency is not so difficult because you know what you're working towards. Because honestly, sometimes the stuff in between doesn't even really matter. You just have to put it into motion, and then the rest will begin to follow. So for example, I tell people, do you have fun doing what you're doing? Because if you're not having fun, chances are you're not going to be plugging into that frequency, because you're already kind of in that negative frequency. You're like, I'm not having fun. I can't wait till this is over. That alone already sends the opportunity, the abundance away. And when you're having fun, chances are the universe will hear you. You're having so much fun. Send more opportunity your way. So one thing I did this year to kind of test this out, I said to myself, I get paid in 2020 to be myself. Within 2 weeks, a company that I've been working with reached out to me, said they wanted to feature me in a freelance campaign. It was going to be a photo shoot in my house, and they were going to pay me on top of it. It's like I didn't have to do anything. All I had to do was be presentable, show up, open the door. That's it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You remind me of you strike me as a person that connects sort of, like the energy, like, I don't know, like the soul with money, which is, people think that, if you're like money oriented, you're kind of goal oriented, you're a capitalistic pig,
yes,
maybe in a way. And you strike me as a person that kind of connects these two and creates a synergy out of that. And you kind of you're very creative about what you're doing. So the question is, why don't they teach us at school? Why parents very often, they're not skilled to teach us? Why the environment? When I was growing up, my mother was a beggar. And we didn't have money. Like, I was growing up in a dysfunctional family, and really, like, no one taught me about so many different ways how you get money. Like, I had to go out and explore that myself. But because I was watching my mother, she was begging for money. Then I understood when I was maybe 3-year-old. Sometimes she would grab me, to like go, in front of a church, and she would be asking people for money. And then I was like, wow, people are willing to help if you ask. And then, on your podcast, I said that you need to ask. The Bible says, if you ask, you shall receive.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a cliche, but it's not. It's not very simple. It's not that simple. Like, I mean, you can go, in front of a church, but then ask, for help, and people will help, because the people, majority of people are really good and they will help you. But how do you get into that game and really, learn that yourself? And how do you maybe find people who are teaching what you're teaching? Because honestly, like, I would, the more I talk with people on, like, so many, amazing people on that podcast, I'm like, wow, so many things I wish someone just sit down with me and explain that. Like, I wish that, like, I would pay. If I was younger, I would pay for, to have someone like you sit down and explain those concepts. So please explain why they don't teach, kids a lot of the time at school about things like that.
I think a lot of it actually comes from, and this is obviously my belief, I think it's because so many people don't know what money is. So many people have not sat down and tried and figure out, like, we have economics. That's great. That it has its purpose and it serves that purpose. But for people to understand on a personal finance level, what does that mean to you? I think the other part is we are still living in societies where everything is impacted by, the 40-hour work week. That really comes from Ford and the assembly lines for building cars. And now most companies are in service models. So they're not actually producing actual widgets, cars, whatever it is. And the way everything has been built in regards to education really fits that work week, right? Like, it's all about you making that money in that 40-hour work week, taking care of yourself, and they're trying to feed your needs based on that outdated idea. And unfortunately, people like me need to step up and fill that space right now because it's not getting taught in schools. In America right now, there are mandates that are being passed that financial literacy education should be a thing in schools. I thought it was wonderful. I thought it was a great idea. I am pro financial literacy education at any level. I think schools should be doing it. I read the curriculum. And it's very disturbing to me to see that they're teaching kids how to be consumers for the first 3-4 modules. And then they start talking to you about budgeting your money, how to be responsible. And I think part of it is just it fits the need of who is creating the system. And I think in the next couple of years, what we'll see is people are going to be outgrowing the system on a massive scale. It's going to be happening more rapidly. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that. Most people are they don't budget, but they can, and their income is it flows very evenly. You get a paycheck, it comes regularly, it comes periodically, you can count on it. But if you're a freelancer, if you're a business owner, if you're working for yourself, that's a lot harder. That's one of the first things, exactly. And that's one of the first things that I solved for my freelancing clients is how do you budget in a way that makes sense with all of that, right? So how do you prepare for the up and downs, the fluctuations? How do you plan for that? Rent will still be due. And that allowed me to kind of service people who were outgrowing the system. So I'm a huge supporter of having multiple income streams. If you have multiple income streams, you're no longer tied to making choices within the system that kind of, it feeds you, right? Like now you have this luxury of a steady income flow, but now you're giving up all these other things that you could be picking up. And if you have multiple income streams, one, you're able to prepare for anything. You don't have to make desperate choices. Let's say you do get fired. A lot of companies are starting to file for bankruptcy and they're reshuffling. They're trying to get their minds right for COVID, or how do they get through this, So as a person, how do you go about that? Unfortunately, right now, it's just you have to go out there and look for people like me, people who really resonate with you. I know I'm not for everybody. I definitely resonate with some people. My approach is enjoyed by some, but there are so many people out there like me who are so passionate about teaching people about getting their personal finances in order. And I'd say if you're not getting it in school, if you're not getting it from your parents, try to see what's out there. Type in money coach in your city, in your area. Look me up on LinkedIn. I have a network of financial coaches that I can refer people to. So I would say if you're proactive, it will allow you to get better. So just because the education's not out there right now, I think don't let that discourage you.
That's one of the reasons why we're recording this episode. I wanted to get the message out there to my Polish audience, because majority of the people listening to our podcast are Polish. As you've seen, other episodes are in Polish as well. But we have some episodes in English as well. So, Poland also was when I was growing up, my parents, they always referred, to to the communism. Like, when we were younger, we had to, stood in line, like with the food stamps, or whatever you call them.
Tickets.
The tickets, yeah. So, they always repeated that, when we were younger, the borders were closed. You couldn't travel outside of Poland.
Yeah.
So it, it stuck with me. And then I've not traveled anywhere outside of Poland until I was 18.
Yeah.
So, and, I didn't have money, didn't have really much opportunity to travel. But the point is that, you're an inspiration, basically, for, all the Polacks listening to us. And I hope that we'll be able to educate them. Recently, I had a call and I had a podcast with a guy who's called Mateusz Tomczyk. He's kind of like a, tax expert, like here in Poland, UK, and other jurisdictions as well, where we're kind of, he is helping our business, and also like whoever is listening to the podcast, they can also, improve their finances because of tax optimization that a lot of people don't know. And I would like to now talk with you about controlling your personal finances. Why does it matter? Because a lot of people, and I think I told you a story of, a lot of people, a few of the guys that I even work with, that I ask people a lot of times, how much tax do you pay? Do you know what tax bracket are you in? A lot of the time people say, you know what? I don't know. The government knows. The government is taking care of that. The accountant at the company is taking care of that. I'm like, how come you don't know how much tax are you paying?
Yeah. I think part of that is, goes back to people not budgeting. It's if you don't understand what's going on even after taxes, the concept of what is happening before taxes is so complex. So I would say first step would be to figure out what's going on with your personal finances, get a budget. And if it's not a budget, at least figure out what's going on every month. Get some sort of baseline of what's going on.
How to do it? It's just you go to your account and then you check your account, right?
Yeah.
That would be one of the methods.
Pull up last month's statement. And you'll have a good idea of what's going out. I mean, sometimes, yes, there's credit card payments and whatever, but you're doing the spending every month. You can be realistic with yourself and say like, okay, 50% of this is entertainment, 25% of it is travel, clothes is the rest. I don't know. But go through it quickly. You don't have to sit there and obsess and get it to the penny, but your rent payments, whatever, everything is going to come out of your checking account for the month. You'll get a good idea of what is happening month to month. And then that could be your baseline for creating a budget for next month, or maybe thinking of ways that you can improve this tracking.
Mm-hmm. And what then? Like, how do they, once they figured it out, what do they do to, once they've taken control of their budgeting of our personal accounts, whatever, how do we learn how to kind of at least get our heads around multiplying money, maybe maybe even keeping more money because we're spending a lot on taxes. Sometimes there are ways, and people think that because they work for a company, there's no way for them to optimize their taxes, which is bollocks.
Yes. Well, so here's the thing. If you're, what I found, at least with the people that I work with, once we get through the part where they understand the basics, they have a budget, they are consistent, they know what is happening, what is their picture right now. In the beginning, we talk about their goals and what they want to accomplish. But by the time we get to this point, a lot of the time they have evolved in their thinking so much that they're already thinking like, I've had clients say like, I'm going to do a side hustle to make some extra cash to start a business that I've been thinking about for ages. Someone decided to do a non-monetary thing and decided to work on her writing because she realized that's her passion and that's what she wants to try and do with her life, and eventually get to a point where she's a published author and that's how she's making her money. Another client decided to get into real estate, something he used to do when he was younger, kind of fell off it. He was part of my money mastermind, the Shmani Academy, for 2 months while he was furloughed. So it got him thinking in new ways to start making money. So I think if you start working on something, even if it's one thing for the next 2 weeks, you're going to try and get your tracking in order, do something that the goal is to improve your, even if it is Googling people's names that you can work with, what you'll find is it begins a cycle of you putting yourself on a path to getting comfortable with money, getting better with money. As you're going through it, it feels really slow, but then eventually you look back and you're like, wow, 4 months ago, I wasn't even budgeting. Look at me now.
Absolutely. So I have two more questions actually. And one is how to get proper financing, how to basically finance our dreams.
Yes. I think there are many ways to finance our dreams, many ways that people don't even consider. Especially right now, there's lots of grants available. It's October, and I believe it's called National Women's Business Owner Awareness Month. I Fund Women, a company that creates grants and partners with different companies and gives grants to women-owned businesses, is giving out $2,500 to 6 pre-revenue business owners that are women. If you look for ways to fund your business, there's definitely other ways. There's the regular ways. You can get funding. You can give out equity in your company. There's now also new options for microlending. I know businesses that are giving away some small portions of equity in the business for just a couple of $100s. There's, friends and family are always good. I've definitely raised money that way for my business before. I think if you find creative ways to
loan,
fuel,
would you go into debt for your business?
I think it depends what you're building. I mean, if you're building some sort of tech, I probably would not, just because the way the industry goes, tech startups tend to burn through cash, and then it's so much pressure, so much competitiveness when you get to the top. It's very easy to kind of not make it in the end. And I would say think about what's realistic for you. Also it depends. My business model has a very low expense line because I work for myself. I work from home. My business expenses are very minimal when it comes to yes, I have to set up processes, infrastructures, and systems, but I'm not renting an office. I don't have many employees, so my costs are very small. But if you're gonna have a larger business, maybe it is worth going into debt. Right now, also, a lot of interest rates are going to be going down by banks. So, in the last financial crisis, one thing that a lot of people who were wealthy, what they were doing was they were taking out debt. And some of them were taking out $500 million just to start new businesses because banks were giving away money just so someone would take it out. So it really depends. I'm definitely not a blanket advice type person. It really depends where you are, what your business is, what kind of industry, and do some research. Or also happy to brainstorm ideas. Love it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your input here. And could you tell me, like, before we go, could you tell me about the Shmani Academy that you mentioned? Why did you start it? What's Shmani Academy?
So the Shmani Academy is a money mastermind that I run every month. It is up to 5 people come together, and we go through the very basics of financial literacy. I call it a toolbox. So how is it that you build a budget? How do you build savings into that? How do you use mindful spending habits when you go out into the world and face this temptation that we're faced with constantly? It's an 8-week program. It's run completely online. So basically we get on, it's 8 weeks. 7 of the weeks we get on group calls. They're sessions where we talk about the topic for the week, where we're learning all the toolbox tools, for lack of a better word. And one of those calls is one-on-one with me, because I also want to make sure whoever goes through the program, this is actually making sense, that once the program is over, they know what they're going to be doing. They have plans. They are feeling great and comfortable with their money. So in a nutshell, the reason why I started the Shmani Academy was because there's this power of having money conversations that I stated earlier. I definitely have never experienced every money puzzle in my life, for sure. So it's nice when the participants can talk to each other and have money conversations, relate to circumstances that perhaps I don't have input for, but then also it adds this layer of having money conversations with, essentially this is with strangers. I bring strangers together, we have money conversations, and sometimes it gets deep. I've had people cry on these calls, get really honestly brutal with what they're experiencing or they have experienced, and it becomes kind of like a little camaraderie group where they feel comfortable sharing stories with each other. They learn from each other, and by the end, it becomes this beautiful thing where it's kind of like a small community of them supporting each other.
That's awesome. And as you mentioned, like, I think we don't need to say, why they should come to be take part in the Shmani Academy. Because you've already said, actually talking about money, that's number 1. Yeah.
Yes.
Then we have number 2 is actually being able to control your money. We've discussed that as well. And number 3 is once you started talking about it, you've become aware, you've controlled it. Now, how do you go out there, multiply it, and how do you finance your dreams?
Exactly.
This is all based on your personal why, yeah, and then that's what you also ask, and then everybody's different, and that's why it's very difficult to define money, because it's energy. That's how I kind of could conclude that podcast. But if people wanna know more about you, where do they go to find you?
Yes, the best place to find me is on LinkedIn, and you can also check out my podcast called 9 Minutes of Creative Wisdom. It's available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Absolutely. And also rags2richesconsulting.com. Is it still available?
Yes, it is. That is my blog, and you can find money insights that you haven't heard before there.
So what we'll do is we'll link them in the description.
Awesome. Thank you.
And anybody who wants to get to know you more and then sign up for the Shmani Academy, then we'll redirect them directly to you. So thank you very much, Olga, for, I highly support your mission because of the reasons that I already gave, because of the, broken system, not only the educational system, but also like
everything.
The whole system is outdated. So thanks for, transitioning and helping with the transition into the, who knows, after maybe the new world order after this COVID.
The new unknown. We'll see.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate you, Olga. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.